So welcome everybody. We are having our live online learning Q&A. So you can use the chat window to ask any and all of your questions. You can start that now if you want to. My name is Jo, and Lightbulb Moment I founded back in 2013, and I just worked out the other day I've done around 1,000 hours, maybe 1,001 now, hours of online delivery, which is an awful lot of experience to draw upon, and I'm looking forward to sharing that with you today. Also, we have Mike. Mike is my co-pilot, is my producer. He's in the chat today to help you out. And Mike, why is it that we have the same last name?
Jo and myself are both siblings, and we run Lightbulb Moment Limited, and today I'm in the capacity of producer, so if you have any issues or questions, just let me know.
Thank you very much. So brother and sister here running our company together. One of the things we need to make sure we can do is use those tools really well. So you should have your participants panel. Hopefully you've got that open. What I'd like you to do, please, is just look at the bottom of your screen, and you've got there a little picture of the two people. Click that, your participants panel will open, and we can use that then for the yes and no to answer questions as we go through. Let's click on that as a yes, and let's see if that's working. Can you click the green tick yes? That would be really cool if you can. Look at all those lovely green ticks. Thank you very much. So we'll use that throughout. That's brilliant. And of course, we also have the chat. Oh, I skipped past that slide very quickly then. Do make sure that you click on that chat window and open there. And what you will see is that Mike has already said, please drop any of your questions here into the chat window. That's what we are looking forward to, is answering your questions. Let me jump to the correct slide, which is not that one either. Oh, Mike, I've failed before we even started on getting to the right slide. That's because I changed my slide right before we started today. And here we go, that's where it is. Okay, top tip from me. Don't change your slides 2 minutes before you start the session. I thought I'd fixed a problem, but I created a whole new problem. And you can laugh at me in chat if you want to from that. So we are going to start our very first question today with what's in our community. We always start with our community questions first of all, because we think it's a really important thing to make sure that even if people aren't available, if they aren't available to come to the actual live session, that we still get to answer their questions. So let me jump over to our community. Here we go. So this is from Trishla. Hello, Trishla. And I see you're in the session as well. You're very welcome to be here. You're saying you used to meet and interact with a class in Mumbai once a week, but because of the pandemic, we've had to stop. And we're trying to stay in contact with Zoom, but everyone is volunteering, so you don't have the premium account. So you're on the basic free version, that's limited also to 40 minutes as well. So how can we help with external tools for features like polls and so on and so forth? And you've got about 20 to 24 people. Okay, great question there, Trishla. And thank you very much as well for volunteering. It's great that you're continuing doing that work despite the challenges that you've got. So in the chat window, have you got any experience that can help Trishla with that, with some different tools that she can use that are free? I've certainly got a whole load of tools that I can recommend, but I'm wondering what it is that you have used. Is there anything that's free or has a free version of the account that can help Trishla with that? One that I've used recently, Trishla, that is free, you just need a free Google account, is called Jamboard. And I've put the link into chat for you. It's a really fun thing because you can use it like you've got Post-it notes. You can include Google image searches in there as well, and different people can work on effectively different flip charts. That can be quite good fun. Also, what you've got, some people are talking about something called Mural, and a lot of people are using this as well. I haven't used this one personally yet. I'm about to dive into it, but again, it gives you all sorts of different templates that you can go and use for Post-it notes, for voting things up, various things along those lines. Melanie, you're saying you love Jamboards. I think we were using one the other day, weren't we? And tell us in chat, Mel, a little bit more about what you love about Jamboards. That hopefully will help Trishla out a little bit more. And if anybody's got different suggestions, of course, share those as well. A few others for you, Trishla, that you might find useful is Kahoot, and that's good for polls. And again, lots of different options on that. There's Socrative, not one that I've used, but people are recommending it. And I'm also going to share in chat menti.com. Again, that's another good one for kind of polls and and so on. Mel says, with regards to Jamboards, it's simple and easy to use, and it's interactive. And I think that's what you need, especially if you've got quite a few people, such as 20 to 25 children. You need something that's relatively simple and easy to use, and also have that interaction there. So Trishla, I really hope that's helpful for you. And again, if anybody's got different suggestions, feel free to add them. Or of course, you can always go and respond to Trishla's question on our community as well. And I've shared that link in there too. Thank you, Trishla, for your green tick. That's absolutely brilliant. So what other questions do we have? Our Q&A session is driven by you. I do have a few slides handy to go and look through. Not that I now know which slide is where, seeing as I changed them. So I haven't got anything that I'm planning to deliver, but I do have a few slides handy, maybe to explain some things and give you some help recording to your questions. So do use that chat window. What questions do you have, maybe around the design of your live online sessions, or it could be the delivery, it could be the technology. We're in Zoom today, but we use Adobe Connect, we use Cisco WebEx meeting and training, we use sort of Teams, and we use GoToWebinar, all sorts of different things. So I think it's interesting whether we look at, is it design? Is it technology? Is it about group management? Is it about confidence? There's all sorts of different places we can go to with this conversation. So let us know in the chat window what your conversation is, what your question is. What I think I'm going to talk about very briefly is, recently I worked out that I'd done nearly 1,000 hours of live online delivery and webinars. And that really surprised me, that number. I wasn't sure if that was an impressive number or not, but I shared it on Twitter, I shared it on LinkedIn, and quite a few people have commented that it's positive and that's surprising. So I feel a little bit more confident in that now. And it's really interesting to have gone on a journey in that 7 years and those 1,000 hours in what I've learned. And Mike, we did a podcast, our latest podcast was actually about your journey as a producer. Mike, can you give us just a really tiny nutshell of what your journey as a producer was, please?
Yeah, certainly. So it definitely jumped in from the shock and overwhelm of so many different tools and functions within the platform, and in which case it was getting to grips with the platform, using different points of it to actually understand how interaction worked, how the technology worked, to then build that picture. So I wasn't quite so afraid to ask questions, to get attendees to use tools within the session itself.
Thank you very much. I really like that point you make about, trying to get over that fear of using things. And I've put a link in chat for everyone. And you can always just go to our lightbulbmoment.community site. We've got a link to our podcasts there. And Mike, we go into a lot more detail kind of about that as well. So let's have some questions that we've got from our audience. Inga, hello Inga, lovely to have you with us. Inga says, hello all, Adobe versus Teams. How would you rate the suitability when driving virtual learning events in the corporate space? Really good question, Inga. What Mike is going to do is go and find a link to a conversation we're having on our community about that, where it's got some people saying, oh, not so sure it's very good, including me, and why Teams is kind of developed a lot more from a very kind of more traditional classroom, like a children's classroom point of view, where it's doing really well. But also, so what some people are sharing on there is how they work around and how they get Teams working. And Teams obviously are doing a lot of investment. They're doing a lot of advertising on TV, certainly in the UK. So they're really developing. They're a great team co-working meeting space, and that's what it was developed for. It's great for doing kind of one-on-one sessions, very small groups. What it lacks are some of the features of things like breakouts and polling and those kind of more detailed functions that you might need. So to your point, Inga, about Adobe Connect versus Teams, if you're doing virtual learning events and you want really good quality virtual classrooms with a really wide variety of activities and using the technology really well, especially in the corporate space, Adobe Connect is my winner every single time. But I always say, go with the thing that you've got. If you've got Teams, then it's integrated, it's part of your system, part of your platform. And also, you know, your organization may or may not want to, A, spend money on another system, and B, have the security and IT kind of infrastructure conversation there. So if you've already got one that might not be your favorite, work it, be creative, find workarounds. Mike shared that link for you, but given a choice, it would definitely be Adobe Connect. Also, so Mel says, we're also limited to Teams in my organization. Would be good to know any good features you'd recommend. Is there a whiteboard facility in there? And Janet's saying the same in her organization, and Inga's agreeing, thanks. So definitely go and have a look at that link that Mike shared. It's got some various different kind of parts of the technology that you can use. And also, if you're in the live session right now, scroll back up to things like Jamboard, Mural, Menti, because you can use those systems with your team. So even if Teams doesn't have something you want to be able to do, and a lot of virtual classroom software still can't do more advanced things, then you've got those other things that you can go and use. So Inga, looks like that's answered that for you. Thank you very much. Really good question. And and Inga's saying Menti works really well with Teams. Thank you, Inga. It's always good to have that kind of first-hand knowledge and feedback. So there was another question in here from Janet. Janet, hello, Janet. Janet says, I notice you're using Mike today. Would you recommend on each session where you can? And if so, why? Now that's a really good question. I actually think I'm going to get Mike to respond to this. Mike, I'm not quite volunteering you to go and work with Janet. That's not quite where I'm at. But Mike, what is the reason that you're here? What are you earning your money for today?
Well, I think what helps with having a producer is the fact that it can alleviate some of the pressure on the facilitator. I can handle any of the technical issues. So for example, say this was a training session and one of the attendees was saying that they couldn't get their audio working or their microphone working. I could be dealing with that, allowing Joe to focus on the facilitation. It can provide a bit more of a professional touch to the session and keep the facilitation on track. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to provide some links in the chat window whilst I pass back to Joe, which goes over in a bit more detail about what the producer does and why it can be an asset to you.
Thank you very much, Mike. Really appreciate that. So what Mike's doing is supporting me in lots of different ways. And Janet says, it sounds like we all need a mic. Yeah, sadly, there's only one of him and he is mine. But he is really useful because, like he says, the timing of the sessions is important. So if we've planned 10 minutes on an activity and I'm at 12 or 14 minutes, he needs to help me kind of rein it in and kind of move on. Also, if my computer crashes, I've got a bit of a croaky voice today. If I start coughing, he needs to jump in. It can just be nice to have a second voice in the session as well. And they can get you out of all sorts of emergencies. So Mike's sharing some links there about producers. How about a green tick from you if you have some kind of producer, maybe a co-facilitator, just someone you work with in the session. So go and find that green tick if you do, or that red X if you don't. that green tick if you have some kind of producer, host, just someone you work with in the session. So Trishla, you do, and tell us in chat, Trishla, how does that work for you? And Jane, you do as well. So again, tell us in chat, how does that other person help you? And Inga and Mel, you don't. And what is it that you're thinking, maybe I need this person to help me? What is the thing that you're thinking that would be helpful for them to do? You know, there is a challenge sometimes of resources, quite frankly, in an organization. If you've got a 1 hour or 2 hour session, you know, we always know there's time before and time afterwards. So your 2 hour session is probably more like 3 hours of your time. So that's 3 hours of your time times 2 people. But it's about having less stress. It's about having a more professional session. And I think those kind of things are really important. So let us know in chat, what is it that those things that people do that help you in your session if you're working with someone? And if you don't yet work with someone, what is it that you're thinking, this would really help me? This one thing would really, really help. Trishla says, we generally work in teams of 2. So it's similar to how Joe and Mike are organising this session. One person leads the session and the other person handles the Zoom back end. Trishla, well, obviously we think that's a great way forwards because it does just take that pressure off and both of you can do that role really well. What we also find, because our job is to help teams learn how to do this, we deliver training courses for teams. By getting people to produce or host or co-facilitate with each other, what we find is even if that's not the plan forever, both people learn loads and you get less stress and you can share that learning in your team a little bit wider. Jane says the person watches the chat window and then decides we should answer them and they help with the technology. And once we have delivered a section, then the other person contributes and gives an added dimension to the learning. Jane, I'm loving that. And that's what Mike does for me as well. We've got less people here today, so I'm keeping up with the chat and the questions. But we had a webinar recently with 500 people where obviously there was no way I was keeping up with chat. So Mike was there to pull out questions or comments from the chat so that I could go, oh, hey, Bob said this, that's a great idea. So that's really useful. And also what Mike is good at, and a co-facilitator or producer can be good at, is that kind of observing things differently. When you're facilitating, you are in the moment doing stuff. So Mike can just provide that observation of something maybe I missed, maybe I didn't, but give a different kind of rounded approach. I'm loving that, Jane. What else have we got? Janet says, that's our challenge. It may be seen as a luxury to have a producer, but I'd like to have a support where we can. I worry that our connectivity in the house is not that good, and this would help with that worry is what I think I'm reading there, Janet. And I think you make a great point, especially during these kind of COVID-19 times when we are working from home. We don't have the same level of connectivity as we might do in a corporate organization where usually you've got a much better standard of service. So actually in those circumstances, it's probably more important to have somebody there in case that happens and have that support. And maybe pitch it as, rather than a luxury, it's a temporary thing, to learn and get the learning around the team about what's going on, as well as that continuity and that professionalism in what you're delivering. Hopefully that might be an interesting way to put it. Inga says, everything Mike mentioned are the very reasons one needs a Copilot. For me, it's helping fielding the questions and tech support. Love that, Inga, because if there are lots of questions, sometimes Mike responds to them in chat and then I don't need to. Or he can kind of highlight the ones to me that maybe that I've missed, for instance. So that's a really great point. What else have we got? I'm just reading through. Inga says, similar to Janet, additional resources for support can be seen as a luxury. Yeah, and it's about maybe kind of thinking about, well, how can we do this in the right way? Is it maybe we want a producer for the first half an hour, that 15 minutes before the session and the first 15 minutes of the session, and then it settles down? Or do we need somebody for the whole hour or the whole 2 hours? So that might be a different way of looking at what that person does. Janet says another question for later, if possible, would be about pre and post work and wraparounds for the session to get the most out of the time together. So Janet, I'm not sure what your question is, whether it's, oh, I think there's another part to your question. Is there? No, there isn't. I'm misreading. So Janet, I'm not sure if the question is around, is it a good idea? Should we do it? Or how can we get people to do the learning ahead of time? So that would be kind of where I'm thinking is what's that culture and how does that work? So I'll come back to that in the chat window, Janet. I see Mike has shared a load of stuff there, which quite frankly I'm going to skip. That's the nice thing. I'm going to skip what he's written. Jane asks, is it possible to Google Doc card sort via the chat window? Let me read that again. Is it possible to Google document card sort via the chat window? The ordering via other methods increases cognitive load. Physically being able to move things around is important. So again, Jane, I'm not 100% with you on this question. I'm wondering if you're meaning for an activity, stuff that's been typed in the chat window, can you then order it? Maybe like a Post-it note activity. So tell us a bit more on that one, Jane. Trishla says, plus because a lot of times with a strong internet connection, kids keep joining and leaving the meetings. They need someone to help them out, like Mike said. Yeah, and Mike's often there. And if I haven't spotted someone's left and come back again, he might do and just say, hey, do you need any help? Maybe try turning something off on your Wi-Fi, and he can give that support. So what have we got from Janet? Janet says, with regards to that kind of pre-work and post-work to make the most of the live session, is it a good idea? Do I recommend it? And I'm writing the way of reading it. Okay, so I think it's a bit of a challenging one. It depends a lot on what is it you're delivering. What is it that you are wanting people to do after the training session? And, there's a bit of a kind of panic, let's get it done now during these times versus what's our kind of longer term planning. The bigger things, I think, are to do with the culture around the learning intervention. A lot of the time, my experience is, even if you give people something to do ahead of time, they don't do it. Not because they don't want to, but we're all really busy. We're all really struggling with time. So that can be a huge detriment. And then you get into your session and you're thinking, right, they've watched the video on topic X, they've done the e-learning module on topic Y, we can just get into the conversation. And you end up teaching it to them again because they haven't done it, which is very frustrating for people who have. So I think the challenge is, yes, you absolutely should do it, because the live session is about being live, doing the activities, having the discussions, getting people's questions answered. But if you're in a culture where, for whatever reason, it's unlikely that will happen, then you have to think differently. So rather than doing pre-work, one session, post-work, maybe you need to do 3 smaller sessions with work in between and have more time in the sessions for delivery, because sometimes people value that. So I can't answer that directly for you. It's a little bit of a per customer or per team or organization, and have a look at the behavior that way. I think I'd go with that. Thank you, Janet. What else have we got in the chat window? Melanie says, thanks, Joe. We'll check out Menti, etc. Another question, are you using the Google Jamboards in breakout rooms in Zoom? Will I need to set up different links on Jamboards? Not sure if it's straightforward. Can you identify breakout rooms A, B, and C with different Jamboard link? That does make sense to me, Mel. Yeah. So what you can do with Jamboard is at the very top of Jamboard, there's a little icon, a bit like flip charts icon, and it will tell you 2 or 3 Jamboards or 4 or 5. You can set that up ahead of time. So everybody you give that link to can actually see all of those pages, all of those boards. They can just click through and see them. Now that can be an advantage for your activity. So what you can do is you could set up ahead of time 5 Jamboards. And on number 1, you maybe have the instructions. That's what I saw Julie Dryber doing recently. On number 2, you can say, right, this is group A, topic X, question, whatever. B, C, D, and so on. So then when you give people that link, you just tell them, right, skip to, you know, you and you're in group B, so go to Jamboard B and so on. And then everybody can just be on their own Jamboard as long as they've got the right link. But that can be beneficial because you can then have a plenary where everybody's looking at everybody else's Jamboard, for instance, so that they can kind of have that discussion. So definitely go and have a look at it and have a play, but you can do it that way. And it was Julie Dryber that introduced me to Jamboard. Also, we have a question from Jane about the activity with the chat. So if we do a link to Google Documents, because they're real-time editable, in breakout rooms, I'd like them to be able to do a real-time card sort and then bring back everyone to the main room. Loving that. So Jane, you can do that with Jamboard. You can do that with Mural, I understand. I haven't done it myself, but I think you can. With Google Doc, I think you can possibly do that, because what you can do then is just, it's each line of text or each paragraph of text that people are moving around. So as long as, you know, I'm wondering if this is something where you've set up that you've got paragraph 1, paragraph 2, paragraph 3, and you want people to sort those out, or on line item 1, 2, 3, 4, and to sort those out. So I think as long as people know it's, you know, sort these 4 sentences out into the order of whatever, or these 4 paragraphs, I think that could work really well in Google Docs. But maybe look at Jamboard, which is a Google product, and Mural as well. They might kind of be useful for you. Okay, absolutely my pleasure to answer you on that one. And we're coming towards the end of our time together. So if you've got any last questions, do please let me know. The other thing I wanted to let you know is this is the last of our current series of our Q&As. We've run quite a few of them, and we think it's probably time to kind of have a relax and focus on something else. We're not going away. Don't worry, we're still here. We have a webinar that actually is tomorrow. This is in, oh, I've pasted the wrong thing. Give me just a second, let's try that. This is tomorrow in association with Braille and Action. We're running a whole webinar, not just a live Q&A session, but a whole webinar about taking your first steps into virtual. So we've got that one tomorrow morning, and then next week we do have another live Q&A, and this time this is with Blake Hennigan from Optimus Learning Services. So if you wanted to join one, even though we're not doing exactly the same as this, you can come and join that one another time if you want to. Okay, so it looks like we don't have any last minute questions. Oh, we do from Trishla. Trishla was said, we're also wondering to get rid of Zoom fatigue in kids, since everything is switched online, they're stuck at the screen. Do you have any ideas? Trishla, it depends what it is you're trying to achieve. If it's about just bringing people together in like a kids club or something, or kind of broad learning experiences, it could be that you get them to do like a treasure hunt, you know, go off and find something, or go off and talk to a member of your family about this, or, you know, go and do something in your home environment and then come back and tell us about what you did. So that could be maybe, you know, 5 minutes or 10 minutes, or do this for tomorrow's session, something like that. So hopefully that will help. Let's just have a quick think about what is it you've got from today. So what's top of mind? What are you thinking? Yeah, actually, that was a useful little learning nugget. Just go and pop in the chat window what you think. Janet says, I'm sorry I've missed the others. I found this one useful. No problem at all. On the community that Mike has just shared a link to, if you go into that, you'll see we've got a whole list of all of the other ones. So, you know, if you wanted to go back and watch those recordings, you'd be more than welcome to. We've got the one next Tuesday with Blake from Optimus Learning Services. So what is it that you've learned today? Trishla says, thank you. It's our pleasure, Trishla. Jane says the Jamboards. Yeah, I definitely want to get into using them some more. They're relatively simplistic, but that makes them easy and fun. Inga says, thank you so much for this quick fire session, as well as all the resource links. It's been extremely useful, and appreciated the feedback on Teams versus Adobe Connect. You are more than welcome, Inga. Lovely to see you. It's been a little while. Janet says, thank you for both of you. You've been great. It's absolutely our pleasure. Thank you so much for being here today. You've got all those resources. You know where we are. We look forward to hearing from you another time in the future. Stay safe, everybody, and thank you for your communication and your conversation today.